The 19th Asian Games kicks off in Hangzhou, China from today. The opening ceremony is expected to be a spectacular gala show with the theme of water and environment. This, incidentally, is the third Asian Games to be hosted by China, as Beijing and Guangzhou have previously hosted the Games. The Hangzhou Asian Games is also going to be the biggest so far in terms of player participation, as 12,500 athletes representing 45 nations will be competing in the Mega Games in just over 2 weeks' time. Good morning, I'm Sapsanamma. Let's begin with the headlines of the hour. Asian Games kicks off from today in the Chinese city of Hangzhou. Over 12,000 athletes from 45 nations converge at the Mega Games. Prime Minister Dahal reaches China after wrapping up US visit to call on Chinese President Xi Jinping and attend the opening ceremony of Asian Games. The central bank shows inclination to slash the interest on deposits. Commercial banks issue a loan of 40 billion rupees this past month. Israeli forces carry out air attacks on the blockaded Gaza Strip. At least 31 people reported injured in the attack. Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal arrived in Hangzhou, China earlier this morning. After wrapping up his US visit, following his address at the UN General Assembly, Premier Dahal reached Hangzhou, China via Hong Kong this morning. The time was around 8 a.m. Nepal time. The Prime Minister is scheduled to call on Chinese President Xi Jinping and also attend the inaugural ceremony of the 19th Asian Games later today. The Premier will wrap up his 8-day stay in China and will arrive back home on 30th of September next Saturday. Prior to leaving for China, after concluding his address at the UN General Assembly, Premier Dahal had called on US President Joe Biden. Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal has arrived in China from US after attending the UN General Assembly. The Nepali delegation has prepared to discuss with the Chinese side regarding the implementation of agreements and development projects signed earlier. However, analysts have opined Premier Dahal's visit is likely to fail to produce any significant result amid lack of trust on Nepal. Analysts believe China has been suspicious of Nepal, considering the increasing influence of India and Western countries. This especially concerns the Millennium Challenge Corporation MCC project, which the northern neighbor has openly criticized, as US has called the multi-million-dollar project a part of the Indo-Pacific strategy. Furthermore, China's trust on Nepal, according to analysts, has weakened by the lack of categorical stand on the Belt and Road Initiative. China has consistently maintained interest on security along the borderline, influence of US in Nepal, and Nepal's stand on the issue of Tibet, among others. It is believed that Chinese side is concerned over the possibility of Western nations using Nepal as a platform to manipulate Tibet. Diplomatic experts are of the view China has preferred not to keep Nepal relation in its priority, as the lack of trust on Nepal had been recorded by the Nepali delegation that had visited China some time back. It may be recalled several understandings were reached between Nepal and China during Chinese President Xi Jinping's Nepal visit some 4 years ago. Following the visit, the Chinese side had shown interest in bilateral cooperation and the implementation of BRI. However, the then Prime Minister of Nepal, Sher Bahadur Dewa, had prioritized grand projects, delaying BRI implementation. Prior to leaving for the US, incumbent Prime Minister Dahal had informed the Parliament that he would discuss with China about the implementation of various previous agreements. All eyes are now on the Premier's 8-day stay in China and whether it will produce anything significant. The Premier is scheduled to attend the inaugural ceremony of the Asian Games and also pay courtesy call to Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, in our Public Voice segment, we've asked people in several provinces what suggestions they have for Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal, who is in China visit. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
आफ्नो राष्ट्रको हितको निम्ति अडानका साथ कुरा राख्न सक्नुपर्छ।
अवरुद्ध रहेको नाकाहरूलाई खुलाउनका निमित्त ठोस पहल गर्नु पर्यो।
उहाँले द्विपक्षीय व्यापार सम्झौताहरू गर्नु पर्यो।
त्यहाँको राम्रो पक्षहरू ल्याएर यहाँ पनि सकारात्मक पक्षहरू ल्याइदिनु पर्यो हैन, डेभलपमेन्ट यहाँ पनि गरिदिनु पर्यो।
विवाद एउटा चाहिँ को समस्याको समाधान होला।
देशको विकास पनि त बढाउनु पर्यो, मात्र भ्रमण गरेर हुँदैन।
दुई देशबीचको बढ्दो दूरीलाई पनि घटाउने खालका सम्झौताहरू भइदिएदेखि राम्रो हुन्थ्यो।
दुई देशबीच व्यापारको लागि सम्झौता गर्ने, बाहिरी लगानी भित्र्याउने,
नयाँ प्रविधिहरू नेपाल भित्र्याउने,
नेपाललाई हिट हुने खालका काम गर्नु पर्यो।
स्याङ्जाको सुन्तला सजिलैसँग यो चीनमा पठाउन सक्ने वातावरण गरेर त्यहाँको सम्बन्धित पक्षसँग छलफल गरेर आइदिनु भयो भने
बिआरआईका कुराहरू, त्यसपछि सँगसँगै एमसीसीका कार्यान्वयनका कुराहरू पनि छन्। र यी सबै कुराहरूलाई समेट्दा राम्रो हुन देखिन्छ।
चीनको नयाँ नक्सामा नेपालको चुच्चे नक्सा समेटेको छैन, जुन चीन सरकारसँग पुष्प कमल दाहाल प्रचण्डज्यूले त्यसको बारेमा पनि कुराहरू राखिदिनु होला।
दुई देशबीचको जुन सीमानामा पनि अलिकति विवादहरू छ, त्यसको विषयमा पनि समाधान गर्नको लागि उच्च स्तरीय पहलको लागि कदम चाल्नुपर्छ।
The agitating teachers who converged in the federal capital Kathmandu demonstrated for 3 consecutive days. The demonstrations impacted general life as the traffic route was completely thrown out of gear these 3 days. On the third day of their agitation yesterday, the teachers demonstrated in a different vein as they sang and danced to express their predicaments. Teachers had penned their own songs that reflected their grievances against the government. Teachers from Sudur Paschim and Karnali province were seen dancing and singing in the folk tunes from western Nepal. During the agitation that lasted for 3 days, teachers had come to the federal capital from across the country. The Teachers Association has said that some 10,000 teachers representing 35,000 community schools in the country had converged in the capital. The teachers will return home feeling triumphant following their deal with the government. However, they did receive the flag for suspending classroom and impacting transport movement with their agitation. Even as commercial banks in the country are lobbying to increase interest rate on deposits, the central bank has shown inclination to reduce interest rate on the same. The government 2 weeks ago provided the facility to commercial banks to count 60% of its deposit in the local levels at its capital. This increased the liquidity flow by about 63 billion rupees in the financial market. However, in the face of liquidity crisis, earlier some 6 banks had increased the interest rate on deposit. These banks that had maintained the interest rate at 10% for the Nepali month of Bhadra have increased the rate to just over 11% for the present Nepali month of Ashwin. Banks have said that the decision was done to save the deposits. According to Central Bank, the present interbank rate stands at 2.7%, while the rate was around 8% at the same time last year. In the meantime, the demand for loan for realtor market and vehicle purchase has gone up with the approaching festivities. Commercial banks say that some 40 billion rupees was piped out in loan in the last Nepali month of Bhadra. The same time last year had only seen a loan disbursement of 16 billion rupees. 6 houses have been completely damaged as a massive fire broke out in Gamghadi, the headquarters of Mugu district in the Karnali province. The incident took place in market area at 1 a.m. and security officials along with the locals have put out the fire. It, however, took 3.5 hours to control the fire. The buildings that sustained damages house computer shop, mobile phone shop, hotel, salon and LPG cylinder shops. No person were harmed in the incident. Authorities are currently taking stock of the damages. It's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion. The question is, what can be done to control the transactions of counterfeit currencies? Your options are A. More police initiation, B. Strict laws and C. General awareness. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. Time now for the international update. The Israeli military has said its forces have conducted air attacks on the blockaded Gaza Strip, where protesters have had confrontations for days with Israeli troops along the separation fence. At least 31 people have been reported injured in the attack. The military said the drone strikes targeted 2 military posts belonging to Hamas movement governing the Gaza Strip. while a tank hit another post from which shots were fired on troops confronting protesters. In Al-Maghazi refugee camp, drones had appeared overhead in a matter of minutes, dropping stun grenades and tear gas canisters on the heavily populated area. Israel shut the Beit Hanuna crossing with Gaza last week in advance of the Rosh Hashanah Jewish holiday, preventing thousands of workers from getting to their jobs in Israel and the West Bank. The closure was extended after days of border demonstrations in which Israeli troops opened fire on stone-throwing protesters. Approximately 18,000 Gaza Palestinians have permits from Israeli authorities to work outside the blockaded enclave, providing a vital injection of cash amounting to some $2 million a day to the impoverished territory's economy. Peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians broke down more than a decade ago, and violence has soared over the past year and a half, with Israel carrying out frequent military raids in the occupied West Bank. In July, Israel launched one of its biggest attacks on the occupied West Bank, killing at least 12 Palestinians in the Jenin refugee camp and wounding at least 100 others. India's space agency has said that it was trying to communicate with its lunar rover and lander to ascertain their current status on the moon, but no signals have been received so far. The Indian Space Research Organization said in a post on social media platform X that as of now, no signals were received from them. The space agency said that it will continue efforts to establish connections with the lander and rover. The spacecraft landed on the unexplored south pole of the moon on 23rd of August, a month ago, making India the first country to do so. Two matches have been scheduled at the SAF Under-19 Championship. In the first fixture at the 1:30 p.m. time, Maldives will see Pakistan at Dasrat Stadium. Pakistan comes into the match fresh from 1-0 win over Nepal and will look to solidify its berth at the semi-final with a win against Maldives today. Today's match is the first for Maldives in the tournament. 90% of Maldivian players are well experienced, having played in domestic leagues. If Maldives chalks out a win today, the semi-final race will be wide open and Nepal will have a chance to enter the semi-final by winning its last group stage match with a big goal margin. The second match of the day is slated for 5:30 p.m. between Bhutan and Bangladesh. A win is must for Bangladesh as it had faced a 3-0 defeat at the hands of India in its first match. This, meanwhile, is the first match for Bhutan in the ongoing tournament. That is all for the moment. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.